Happy New Year and welcome back to the Corporate Culture Protest. I'm Arika, your workplace wellness advocate. And as we step into 2026, I want you to think about one thing, not resolutions, not goals, but boundaries. Because here's the truth, you don't need a new job to have a new start. Sometimes the transformation begins with how you show up in the same space, with new awareness, new self respect, and new limits. This season, we're focusing on what employees can do to build healthier relationships with work and to take back control, protect their energy, and create change from inside out. Welcome back and Happy New Year, Dr. Chipo and Jenna.
Happy New
Thank
Year.
you,
Thanks for having
Arika.
me.
Hey, let's start.
Happy New Year to you too.
Thank you, Dr. Chipo. Let's start this year by rewriting how we show up at work with courage, clarity, and a little less people pleasing. Let's talk about the trap so many of us fall into, being the good employee, the one who never says no, the one who fixes everything, and the one who burns out quietly. Jenna,
Yeah, so for me, at the heart of it, although the most common one I've seen, Erica, is fear of disapproval, and then ultimately leading to conflict. Naturally people want to do well at their jobs and they want to progress and they've obviously got responsibilities. The challenge comes is that with that mindset, if you're then in a toxic space where you're afraid to speak up, you can then agree to do everything, and therefore not have boundaries or not say no to anything. And so you couple that mentality of fear of disapproval with that kind of culture, and that is a recipe for potential exhaustion and burnout. Along with that, or connected to that, is obviously the need for acceptance and belonging. It's one thing working in a place, it's another thing where you feel you belong, where you feel you kind of own your seat in the place. But again, it's when worth is based on achievement, or if there's never recognition, or if it's if you're looking over your shoulder every all the time, then that feeling of acceptance can feel elusive. And that is a common thing I've seen as well. And so because of that, those two things at the top, what can ultimately happen is low self-esteem, or a place where worth is dependent on saying yes. And just to conclude on this point, I saw a good quote the other day, and it said freedom from fear is not about being fearless, or it's not about fearlessness. Freedom from fear is separating who you are from what's happened to you. But when you're in these toxic spaces, so easily an incident can happen, and then you can internalize it and start to define yourself. Like, I'm not worthy, or I'm not good enough. And that for me is the concern where the challenges happen. Yeah, so that is what I've noticed, and really wanted for people to take heed of that as we go into the new year.
wow, that's powerful, that quote.
Mm.
Dr. Chipo.
Yeah.
No, I completely agree with what Jenna has just said. Maybe just to add on to that, I think also if we are also to look at it from a place where sometimes we tend to make ourselves small in these toxic spaces, toxic workplaces because of our fear of conflict, like Jenna was saying. So if then we've been socialized and we've internalized the idea of being the peacemaker, being the Desmond Tutu in the workplace, then we end up in a position where we end up then just doing things and people pleasing because we want to keep peace in the toxic workplace. So you find that if then 2026 is going to be a new year, we need to work on that as well, and not be afraid to be in a place where conflict arises. In that way, then we find mechanisms to resolve whatever conflict happens, instead of being then the champions of being the peacekeepers and wanting to fix everything that is broken in the toxic work environment. Because the more we do that, the more we internalize that, and the more we carry the burden of being the fixers, the ones who always have to resolve and solve things for the sake of peace for everybody in the workplace. We are not holding the toxic individuals within our workspaces accountable for their behavior and their action. What we are
Yeah.
doing is we continue to perpetuate a culture where they go off without being held accountable, and it continues the vicious cycle of the toxicity within that space. So I think more than anything, 2026 should be the year we step into our workspaces with the mentality of saying conflict is bound to arise. But what then we need to do is to find healthy mechanisms of dealing with the conflict instead of sponge bobbing everything and carrying the burden on our backs as individuals without holding the responsible individuals accountable for their toxic behavior in the workspace.
But often, just to conclude on this point, what dictates the ability to deal with conflict is the tone set from leadership. In other words, if
Absolutely.
conflict, you know what I mean? Conflict, the ability to deal with conflict happens where if leadership creates an environment where it's safe to deal with conflict, if it's a safe enough environment to do such. If you don't feel safe, what happens is you then sweep things under the carpet or you become passive aggressive, or there's a culture of gossip or a culture of talking behind backs because people are too afraid to take things head on. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So, and then couple that with fear of job loss, or they throw there's such high unemployment and just be happy you've got a job. So then you feel like you're between a rock and a hard place. So that's what makes, I think that I agree with you with the conflict and the tone, but the ability to deal with conflict is set by the leadership. In other words, how safe is it to actually do conflict management?
So it's almost like
Absolutely.
a matter of the employee learning how the environment works and then
Correct.
using
Yeah.
what they learned to manage it better. So if they know, look, I
Correct.
can't exactly just say no, blurt out no. I first have to say, listen, I have these tasks, and then I need you to guide me to tell me what's urgent because I will not be able to complete all of these and what you're asking me to do right now. So it's all
Exactly.
about learning the environment and trying to figure out how you need to approach it. Because a lot of the
Correct.
time
Yeah.
it is you're so afraid to say, no, look, I've got other stuff to do. You can't say that. You
Yeah.
it's that fear culture. And then
Yes.
it's when toxic management wants you to be silent. All you have to
Mm,
do is agree
mm,
with them or else.
mm.
So people
Yeah.
just agree. And they like it that way, I guess. It suits them
Yeah.
just fine. So
Yes.
maybe this year means being honest about your
Yeah.
workload and your well-being and your worth.
Mm, mm.
So how do we set boundaries without fear? And then how do we keep them? Jenna, can you help us out with this?
How do we set boundaries without fear? Well, yeah, this is where the kind of
Mhm.
$64 million question is, how difficult it is in terms of how to do.
Yeah.
The first thing obviously is to identify when your energy is being drained. So obviously the first thing is to identify the kind of just to psychoeducate the public who might be listening, is to identify the symptoms that show when you are being drained or where you're starting to affect your boundaries. So things like constant tiredness, lack of motivation, irritability, mood swings, difficulty concentrating, avoiding people, frequent headaches and tension, stomach issues like gastrointestinal issues, and just feeling underappreciated and overwhelmed. So those are some of the, first of all, so those are some of the symptoms to pick up, first and foremost. And then the going further from there is to start using I statements more. So instead of saying you, rather to say things like I'm unhappy because. In other words, it expresses needs without blaming. So I think that's a
Mm,
very good one. To be consistent. So you have to, the thing is, and I know this is easier said than done, but to reinforce boundaries regularly, um, and consistent ones, because you can't do it once and then you never
Mm,
do it
mm,
again. So that's important. Um, then checking emails after hours. Actually, I know there's some countries where it's illegal after hours to send emails.
Mhm.
So yeah, so avoid those 9 o'clock, you're lying in bed and you're reading emails, things like that. Um, and just to prior and last of all, just to prioritize your tasks. Um, so often we solve problems purely based on emotion, thinking if this doesn't happen, there'll be a catastrophe or something will go wrong. So you're solving a problem on emotion. But rather to say,
mm.
let me prioritize what's important, and so then you become more task driven. And that's a very good way. It's helped me. I will say that. So that's a very good way. So do you guys, can you relate to some of those, Dr. Chipa, Erica?
No, I can. I think for me it starts with protecting one's energy because
Hmm.
I can't show up at my utmost best if my energy is not right. So I think more than anything, everything you need to center yourself to be in a space where whatever you do or however you respond or whatever kind of behavior you decide to exhibit in the workplace has to come from a place where you are in that space where you are yourself, because half the time you notice that if your energy is everywhere, if you are constantly all over the place trying to blow out fires that you didn't even start, that's when the burnout happens. So I guess more than anything for me, it's about protecting my energy. It's about protecting that energy to say, okay, I can only go as far as this point, like you're saying, after hours, emails, attending to work when you can't, because you can't pour from an empty cup. There's no way you can pour from an empty cup, and there's no way you can show up at your best and perform to the best of your abilities if your energy is depleted or if your energy is compromised. So I think more than anything, for me, 2026 has to be a place where it all starts and ends with me energetically. Where am
Yeah.
I energetically? How well am I energetically to deal with everything else? Because there's no way that you can fill anybody else's cup when yours is empty.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
100%, Dr. Chippo. That like sums it up. Um, but like for me, I think that the emails after hours, I think maybe that culture can be set from leadership, where leadership says, listen, we don't want anyone working after 6 o'clock until the next day. So no sending emails or no WhatsApping anyone. And WhatsApp is a monster on its own, because even though you're not on your laptop and you don't have your emails on your phone, you'll get work WhatsApps. So I
Yeah.
think maybe that would just be
Mm,
easier if the
mm,
company sets that boundary for us and says, listen, no working.
Mm.
And then the employee comes to work fresh or refreshed,
Mm.
and they're able
Yeah.
to give their best. And with all of the issues, like Jenna was mentioning earlier, that affects one's job. If
Yeah.
you have a headache or if your tummy is giving you issues, you're not going to be at your best. If you haven't slept
no,
because
you're
you've
not.
been working, then I
Mm.
just how are you supposed to show up and give your 100%?
And it's chicken and egg because the reason you have the symptoms is related to the environment in the first place. So it's chicken and egg.
Yeah,
Mm.
correct.
Yeah.
So how do we reclaim our power this new year? I want every employee listening to remember that they have power, even in systems that try to make them feel small. Jenna, how would you advise employees?
And reclaiming your power.
Hmm.
Hmm. It's a it's an interesting way you've framed it. Um, well, the first thing I would say is to say to each employee, what person is walking through the gates every morning? What person is driving through the gates every morning? In other words, do you dread going to work or do you look forward to it? So that's first and foremost is um, who's walking, because That
Mm,
alone gives you answers as to your state of mind and your desire and that kind of thing. So to really do a kind of mindful reflection on your state of mind in terms of physically and mentally, in terms of how are you showing up at work, and then to reflect on when you then at work, are you just there physically, or do you feel you are actually involved? There's actually a word called presenteeism, where you at work but not really there. So to
mm,
to really reflect on what can you do differently, that what can be done differently compared to last year? Is it the nature of the relationship with people? Is it what are the factors that have led to your mindset? You know, have you addressed it? Are you afraid to address it? Are you worried about the consequences if you do address it? In other words, if I'll say one thing, to really take stock of how you are when you're in the present. What are you going through as you sit on that chair? Do you shut your eyes and you're sitting on that chair? How are you feeling in that moment? Nervous, excited, you just want to go home, you're dreading it, and then start the
mm,
questions as to how has this come about in the first place? That would be my
mm,
advice to people for the year.
mm, mm,
Wow, that's
Yeah.
incredible, Jenna. Yeah, that's a good idea.
Thanks, man.
Maybe also write it down, put your thoughts on paper.
Yeah.
Sometimes you don't take that time to think about it. You know, you've said so many times that we tend to internalize things. But I mean, if
Yeah.
we put it down on paper and then go back and read it, and then, you know, it will help us understand what's going on within us. Dr.
Yeah.
Chippo, what would you advise?
mm. Yeah, maybe to show up, just show up. No, I'm kidding. No, I think maybe just to add on to what Jenna has just said. Maybe why one thing that stood out for me, or that sparked something in my mind, was to ask the question of who is showing up for work when you get up every day. Is it the driven you, like Jenna is saying? Is it the driven you, or the you who is dreading being in that space? So for me, it then points to daily rituals of what you then do, or what then you can do when you get to your workplace and your workspace. So it then becomes very much a practical thing for you to be hands-on, to be present in the sense of showing up and showing up to perform at your best. What kind of rituals then get you to be motivated to be in that space, so that your students get the best of you, your colleagues get the best of you at the same time, without you getting drained in that environment? Because I think one thing that is very important is for us to continue to have an awareness of what it is that uh, can point to red flags of toxicity in our workplaces. I think the more we are in a space where we can identify that, the more we can be proactive to deal with whatever it is that's happening on the ground, because you cannot fix what you don't know exists. But the moment then you're in that space where you can identify, then you identify the problem, we can then move towards finding a solution to how you can best show up in your workspace. I think more than anything for me, I think 2026, we just need to be proactive in identifying what it is that is giving us energy, and what it is that could possibly have the impact of pulling on our energy in the negative, and taking all our inspiration and all our motivation from us to do our work. So I think, yeah, more than anything for me is just to keep our heads up and look out for anything that can scream red flag. Don't sweep anything under the carpet, address things and be proactive to make sure that your workplace doesn't become your nightmare, your 9 to 5 living hell, if so to speak.
Oh, that's really good. So people shouldn't feel powerless in the workplace. If you do take some of the advice from Dr. Chippo and Jenna and figure it out and decide what you're going to do, be very strategic about it. Don't blame yourself. So you are the culture. Every email you send, Every no you say, every time you choose calm over chaos, you are building something different. This year is not about becoming someone new. It's about becoming more yourself, more aware, more confident, more grounded in what you deserve. You do not need permission to take up space, rest, or speak the truth. So let's start this year with boundaries that protect your peace and remind the workplace that your humanity is not negotiable. Until next time, protect your energy, honor your worth, and keep protesting with purpose. Thank you, Dr. Chipo and Jenna.
You're
Until next time,
welcome.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
bye.
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 Immortal lyrics